Should be good.
Okay. Okay. Let me just
You know,
that.
Okay, there we go. I found the user who was making the noise. Go ahead, Julie.
Okay, very good. Here we go. This is a meeting of the Environmental and Energy Commission, Thursday, August 20th, 5:30 p.m. I'd like to read the procedure for a remote meeting, just so everybody understands how that works. Due to the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting will be held remotely by the Environmental and Energy Commission. This meeting will be broadcast live on YouTube at www.youtube.com/user/village/wilmette/live and on channel 6, and then published on the village's website at www.wilmette.com. To participate in the meeting, please contact the village manager's office prior to the meeting at aartega@wilmette.com or 847-853-7502 for instructions on how to participate by computer. To participate by telephone, call 872-239-8225 and use code 709-694-485#. Written comments may be submitted to aartega@wilmette.com. Comment may be made during the meeting through YouTube Live, where comments submitted will be read to the Environmental and Energy Commission. And I'd like to add that anybody who's attending the meeting and would like to make a comment, there will be a period for public comment at the end of the meeting. So that's how it works. So I would like to call the meeting to order, and just, most of us went through this Monday, but just so everybody's aware, because this is remote, what we'll do is, rather than a show of hands or a voice vote, when it's time to vote on anything, we will have Alex call the roll and we can vote in that way. So Alex, could you call the roll for attendance, please?
yeah, actually, I'm gonna take care of that today.
Okay,
All right, Chair Wolf,
here.
Commissioner Alt, Commissioner Cesaretti, Commissioner Feinstein,
Here.
Commissioner Hout,
Here.
Commissioner Kim, Commissioner Muno,
Here.
and Commissioner Parkhill.
Here.
I think that's everyone.
Okay, great. And next order of business is approval of the minutes of the meeting from August 17th, 2020. First of all, are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes. Is there someone who'd like to make that motion?
I will make that motion.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second.
Okay, very good. So it's been moved and seconded. And Kate, could you call the roll for approval of that motion?
Yep, now that we know who's here, I'm just gonna call who's here.
Okay,
Chair Wolf,
yes.
Commissioner Feinstein,
Aye.
Commissioner Hout,
Aye.
Commissioner Muno,
Aye.
and Commissioner Parkhill.
Here. Aye.
Okay, very good. So the minutes are approved. Next is the chair's report. And I'd like to report on some things. I was able to have a conversation earlier today with Linda from Go Green Wilmette. She's the liaison, Linda Kurtz, who's a former EEC member, and she's now the Go Green Wilmette liaison. And there were a number of things that they've been working on and wanted to kind of call to our attention, and some ideas for things that might be implemented actually sooner rather than later. One is community solar. And I understand the village is doing some work with community solar with some of the streetlights, but it's also available just for general consumers. And one of the things that seems to be difficult is figuring out how to sign up. For instance, I would like to sign up, and I haven't quite figured it out yet. So Linda said she'd send me some information, but we were discussing that it might be a good thing to include some links to further information about that if it's not already on the village sustainability website. And that might be an easy thing to just spread information about that, because that is becoming readily available. Another thing we talked about is the broad concept of sustainable habitats. There have already been some steps with joining monarch mayors, doing prairie and native plant installations, encouraging rain gardens, that sort of thing, to encourage habitat for pollinators and native sustainable habitat. And things like Tree City certainly encourages sustainable habitats too. But one thing that there was concerned about was gas-powered lawn maintenance equipment. And I did notice, reading through it today, that in the Chapter 4 on land, it does include recommendations for transitioning away from gas-powered implements. But Linda and I were discussing it would probably be helpful to do just a little quick study of best practices. I believe some neighboring communities have banned gas-powered leaf blowers altogether, because we were thinking it might make more sense just to ban them, because otherwise it's allowed certain times of year. And I don't even know, I see somebody with a leaf blower, I don't know what kind it is. So that's something to look into, something we as a commission might take a look at. The issue was also brought that it's a social justice issue, in that the people who are the employees of the lawn company are told, here, use this leaf blower, and it might be gas powered, and they're then breathing that stuff all day, and they have no choice. So the other thing we discussed, and John, you and I have discussed this a little bit too, is with people home more, I think people are noticing the noise and are concerned about the effect on their lungs of all this particulate matter flying through the air. So that's something that, again, is already mentioned in our Chapter 4, but that might be something we could consider taking some action on, or encouraging some changes of the laws sooner rather than later. Another thing with the sustainable habitats is some people are using a mosquito spraying service to come and spray their whole property, which destroys every insect. And there's already the North Shore Mosquito Abatement District, and I think people might not realize how destructive that is. So we're thinking if there's some way to just look at the whole concept of sustainable habitats altogether, that could be very good. And then let's see, Walk, Bike, Wilmette, I'm not sure the exact status of the active transportation plan, but I did read through it. I thought it was very, very well done. And it seems to me that it sets out some potential future projects, gives some guidance for development of active transportation ways throughout the village. And I was very impressed with how well done that is. Let's see, staff report. Any new developments there?
Well, Julie, because you mentioned the bike and active transportation, master bike and active transportation plan. I think it was actually approved at a transportation commission meeting earlier in August. And I think the next step is for it to go to the municipal services committee.
Okay, excellent.
Which I think they are looking at the end of September for that, but the meeting date hasn't been set yet.
Okay, very good. Okay, and any other new development? Well, first of all, I wanted to ask about your prairie. I know you were worried about it. I have driven past, I haven't had a chance to look at it up close, but it seemed like there were some things growing and blooming.
Yeah, we've got a lot of black-eyed Susan in there. And Karen has actually been consulting with us on that. And there are some non-invasive weeds, which we hope to control. We're going to do a little bit more supplemental planning this fall. But we installed it as a dormant seeding in the fall and this past fall. And if you can remember the crazy winter that we had, where first it snowed on it snowed on Halloween and
yeah.
it was super warm in December. So I assume that had something to do with it, that it's not being as successful as we thought it was going to be. But we're not concerned yet. It's just going to take a few years for it to get established.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, it's nice to see something.
Yeah, and the second site in that kind of string of pollinator gardens that we had proposed is actually at Glenview and Hibbard, and that is actually being bid as part of the North Shore, the neighborhood storage project phase 2. So if bids come in favorable for that, that would be constructed next year.
Okay. Great.
I don't remember if I mentioned this. Well, actually, I think it happened after our February meeting, but we got a very generous grant from the Wilmette Harbor Rotary Club to install a lot of perennial and prairie plants, pollinator-friendly plants at the Village Hall. So
Great.
we will be installing that at the end of August, probably beginning of September. And it's actually about half of them are going in beds that are currently only used for annuals. So it'll be permanently replacing the annuals that are installed twice a year at the hall.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's very nice. And I think another good thing about that, well, first of all, everybody can see it. Second of all, there's another small prairie by the fire station at 13th and Lake, and that connects the dots with the Village Hall, and I think it starts to connect with even up along the Green Bay Trail. So that's great because that way the pollinators can just make their way from one to the next. Yeah, that's excellent news. I had not heard about that. Okay, next order of business is discussion of the sustainability plan. And here's what I'm thinking. We have really been, at our last meeting, we went through all the sections, except Bill, you were absent, so we did not get a chance to go through water. So would you mind briefly summarizing what we're looking at with water? I thought we could take a look at that first. Then the next thing I'm thinking we could do is see how we might start to integrate this and what things we might combine and see what we can do to move it to the next stage of being ready to, let's first of all outline what next steps are. So I think any changes or, just reflecting what we have here. And then I think, and John and Kate and Alex, if you can correct me if I'm wrong here, I think we were going to look at combining things like, I wrote the leadership section, but it really needs to be rolled into other sections because once again, we're using the GRC2 framework, but as we worked with this, I think we all came to the conclusion that we don't need to have every single section there. What makes more sense for us is to combine a few things here and there. So I believe our next step, because we really have a good draft here and we've reviewed most of it, I think the next step is to see what we need to combine and then get it ready to have staff take a look at it.
Correct.
Yeah, for things like, oh, we're already doing this, or combining things in different ways. And I would hope maybe even some opportunities that might come up. I know there are always grant opportunities that come up. There might be something that would come up there. And then from there, it would go to the administration committee, probably back to us as a committee to incorporate any suggestions made by staff, and then on to the administration committee, and then on to village board from there. So just to outline our basic approach here. But again, I think we have made a lot of progress. So let me see if I can find the water section. Bill, if you could just kind of give us a brief highlight.
I could do this very, very quickly. The water section is divided really into three parts. I talk about drinking water in Lake Michigan, the drinking water plant itself, and then finally management of stormwater and wastewater, so to speak. The information on Lake Michigan is based on information that EPA has provided. There is a plan known as the Lakewide Management Plan, and that evaluates some of the threats that are affecting Lake Michigan, and it gives it an overall rating. The overall rating for Lake Michigan is fair, meaning that it provides high quality drinking water and is suitable for swimming. Some of the concerns that still affect Lake Michigan are invasive species, a little problem with nutrients that cause algae blooms, and then the other issue is high water levels, which cause beach erosion. And I think Lake Michigan is almost at a record high level now, and we've seen the impacts of beach erosion. This past summer, particularly early in the summer when we had those heavy rains and sort of the impact it did on the lake shore, kind of north side of Chicago, Rogers Park into Evanston. So that's the Lake Michigan portion of it. The second portion of it is the drinking water portion. Wilmette operates its own plant, and turns out that it provides actually revenues for the village of Wilmette, that the capacity of the plant is in excess of what the needs are for the village. So Wilmette provides drinking water to a number of adjacent communities. Overall, the quality of the water is quite good. One of the concerns that has emerged over the past couple years, stemming from the crisis in Flint, Michigan, was the concern about lead in the drinking water. Wilmette's water treatment plant adds chemicals to coat plumbing fixtures and pipes, as well as reduce lead. They sample the water periodically, both at the plant and at residents. And the EPA standard, current standard for lead is 15 parts per billion. 90% of the samples in Wilmette were below 6.4. So there isn't any concern about lead in drinking water in Wilmette. Most of the information in my report is centered with the stormwater portion of it. Wilmette has two separate systems, and the village is divided east and west by Ridge Road. East of Ridge Road is the older part of Wilmette, and that has what's known as a combined sewage system. Combined systems mean that it accepts both sanitary wastewater as well as stormwater. And the system is sort of undersized. Heavy rains tend to overload the system, both based on the capacity of the sewers themselves, as well as the ability to get water into the treatment plant. All Wilmette sewage is treated by the Water Reclamation District North Side plant, which is located at Howard and McCormick. The deep tunnel system, which was built to try to deal with excess rainwater, does help Wilmette somewhat, but even in heavy rainfall, the overflow to the deep tunnel system allows an excess of water to overflow through what are known as combined sewer overflows. These combined sewer overflows go into the North Shore Channel. And again, with real heavy rains, both water that's flowing directly into the North Shore Channel, as well as combined sewer overflow from all the overflow points, in Wilmette, Evanston, and north side of Chicago, cause the North Shore Channel to reach an unsafe level, and that at times requires the Water Reclamation District to open the locks in Wilmette Harbor. When you open the locks, you have combined sewage flowing into Lake Michigan, which is a concern both in terms of the impact it might have on the ability to swim at beaches, as well as the impact on the drinking water supply. Fortunately, Wilmette's drinking water intake is far enough out into Lake Michigan that it seems that when they open the locks, that there hasn't been any trouble with the impact on our drinking water. So that's the story on the east side of Wilmette. There certainly is an active program underway to get people that have connections into the combined sewer system to try to divert any stormwater, rainwater away from the combined sewer system, so it's more sanitary and less rainwater. That's an ongoing program, and Wilmette has had some programs to try to encourage people to disconnect. Currently, there's a program by the Water Reclamation District which will give people some credits if in fact they can do some work at their individual properties to remove stormwater from entering the combined sewer system. So let's move on to West Wilmette, which is probably where we have the biggest problem. The West Wilmette has a separate system, which is, on its face better than a combined system. Unfortunately, the stormwater part of the separate system is inadequately sized, and as a result, with heavy rainfalls, we've had street floodings in parts of West Wilmette, as well as actually standing water in roads. So we now have two projects. One has been completed, which was the one that was associated with the storage basin for actually sanitary sewerage at the West Park. And that the problem that we had in the past is that the water reclamation interceptor, which flows parallel to the North Branch of Chicago River, causes water to actually use the backflow into Wilmette, which would cause the sanitary sewer system in West Wilmette to back up. With the new storage basin at West Park, we have the ability to turn off inflow from the interceptor sewer, the sanitary water interceptor, to prevent it from backflowing into Wilmette. We can store the water in the basin in West Park, and that has prevented backup of toilets in basements and things like that. So that's been one improvement that's in place and seems to be working well. The other part of it is the stormwater problem, and that's the current project that's underway to install three retention basins. The one that's currently under construction at Community Playfield behind Highcrest Middle School, to contain stormwater so that we don't have flooded streets and back up into basements again. That's a three-phase project. Phase one, I guess most of the construction is done for the storage basin. Many new interceptor sewers have been installed, and the first part of it is close to becoming operational. There will be two others that will be installed kind of in phase two and phase three. Again, the goal is to try to reduce flooding by greater than 50% for being able to handle, I think, a 10-year rainfall event. So that's kind of the quick rundown. Lake Michigan, reasonably good shape. Drinking water, no problem, and a source of revenue. And then stormwater, we got the CSO problem with overflows in East Wilmette, and then the ongoing current project to reduce flooding of streets and basements in West Wilmette. So that's a quick rundown.
Very good. I think that was a very good summary. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Yeah, I think that's very thorough and very good. Thank you very much. I think that's great. And yeah, there's been a lot of construction, but I think some progress is being made here. Okay, let's see. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is, let's see, a couple of things. I'm not sure which area the dark sky stuff falls under. I think it's Amanda's area. Jeez.
That gets in sustainable communities.
Yeah, I think it is. And so we had looked at that as a possibility. I've been doing a lot of research about that this summer and finding out more about it. And it seems to me more and more that it ties into the whole pollinator thing and the whole bird-friendly thing. Let's see, when the Optima project at the bank, and I do not know the address, but at Central in Green Bay was approved, they agreed to do bird-friendly glass. I think it brought that to everybody's attention, the importance of migratory birds and the things that we can do. So that I think would be interesting to look at. And the whole dark sky thing is also related to the whole pollinator thing, because insects need dark skies to carry out their normal behaviors. And I don't know to what extent we can recommend that, but I know it comes up in that area. And I think that's something that we could maybe look at in greater detail at some point, or maybe as something that might come out of this, we could potentially make a recommendation to the board, the village board, that they look at changing that ordinance. Any thought from staff on the best way to kind of approach that?
I think if it's not in there already, just having some reference to, and I think as it was mentioned, this is in chapter 8, and I think there's a footnote about dark skies there. Maybe in that chapter, put a note about review, dark sky regulations as it relates to WMET. Like we're doing with a number of other things, we're going to be looking at, as you mentioned, pollinators, bees, chickens, things like that, that the sustainability plan is asking the village board to have, I would imagine, the EEC take up.
Okay, so we might in this plan suggest looking at that, and then it would in fact come back to us to study a little bit later.
Yeah, there's going to be a number of things like that that will come back to you later, and I guess it would be up to the commission and the maybe the administration committee to sort of prioritize what you want to tackle first. But yes.
Okay.
Julie,
That's good.
I am seeing that in that chapter, it's on page 43 of the draft plan. There is one of the goals is that the village should assess and adjust village and other public lighting practices per the International Dark Sky Association.
Okay.
I do think that
Good.
goal is in there. The only thing that I'm scrolling up to see if it's mentioned previously in that chapter, but maybe suggestions on specifically how to adjust instead of just saying adjust. I don't know if
Yeah, I looked at the International Dark Sky Association, or whatever it's called, and basically what they want to do, there are 3 forms of light pollution. There's glare, which is like a gleaming headlight. There's light going up, and then there's light trespass. But for instance, I think our garage lights are compliant. They have a little cutoff thing so that rather than the light going everywhere, it just goes down where you need it to be. And my neighbor is redoing their yard, and they wanted to do some pathway lights. I said, do this instead of this. So if you have just a little cutoff thing so that the light goes just where you need it, then that works. So they do have some specific suggestions. The question I had, and this is something that we could run by staff during the staff review portion, is I am not sure to what extent the new streetlights are dimmable, because those are shooting light up, because one of the things that happens is there becomes like this urban glow. We really noticed it from the comet was around the summer. We actually had a comet viewing party in our backyard and we couldn't see a thing.
I don't know the answer to that, but I can find it. I can.
Okay, that would be good to know. I asked my son, who works for Elevate Energy, and he said some are and some aren't. The other thing that I thought was fascinating is there's a range of light, and the warmer light, which is more like actually a sodium vapor lamp, is supposed to be preferable as opposed to the cooler lights, like a metal halide would be mostly towards the blue light, and that is one of the more disruptive things to insects and pollinators. So going with a warmer type of light. But I think that's something that when the time comes, we as a commission could study that and make specific recommendations, because I have it on my phone, but I can't find it right now. I won't bring it with it. I have a little diagram of what wavelength is preferable for all of that. So I think that's something we definitely could look at. And again, there are some specific things, specific light fixtures. And I was thinking, for starters, when we get to that, at least all new construction could be required to use that, because it's easy enough. You just choose this fixture instead of that fixture, I think, for a lot of it. So that sounds good. So we will have some recommendations for things for us to review. Let's see. This might be a question for staff. I meant to mention earlier, for those of us who might not have heard about this, Rebecca Boyd has moved to the Washington, D.C. area, so she is no longer on the commission. I feel that she did an excellent job with the energy section, so we have that now. So I guess the question is, do we want to assign somebody else to be in charge of energy at this point, or do we want to just take that? We had decided previously that would be the overarching theme. Do we want to just take what she has and use it as the overarching theme and implement it with what we have?
Julie, if I could just interrupt for a second, that Rebecca did chapter 1 on climate, not energy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said the wrong thing. I meant climate. Yes, you're
Yes.
right. I meant the climate. Yes, climate. Yes.
I made
So-
that mistake last time.
Yeah. So any thoughts on the best way to proceed with that? And I guess another thing at the same time for probably John, are we down one commissioner? Do we need to look at trying to appoint someone else, or where do we stand on that?
We are down one commissioner, yes. So
Oh.
I would imagine that President Belinsky will be reviewing town banks. If people, somebody who's interested, encourage them to get it in as soon as possible. And
Mhm.
Julie, as the chair, I think it's appropriate if you wanted to reach out to President Belinsky to just mention to him this. But the vacancy was noticed, so the village board should be aware of it.
Okay, that sounds good. And then any thoughts about, because I think that's one of our next steps, and what we had talked about doing is, I feel that we have a really, really good draft, and everybody has been amazing at getting their parts done. And I know Bill worked very hard last summer along with Rebecca in getting everybody to do their sections and have a similar format and everything. But what we're talking about doing now is combining some of the things, that sort of thing. And we had thought that that's really kind of an editing job. And I thought I would probably work with staff to do that. And then we could run it by everyone again. But any thoughts on the climate section, and whether somebody wants to kind of work on that, or whether we feel that what Rebecca has done speaks for
Well,
itself?
Julie, if I might weigh in, I did the editing for the entire report. I mean, the report that we have before us, I took the individual chapters, sort of reformatted them, and did some editing. Rebecca and I had discussions back and forth regarding chapter 1, climate. And I'd be willing to take that on, but my interest is a little more sinister. because we had a disagreement over the scope of that chapter. I think that it has a lot more background information than is needed than the other chapters. I wanted to retain some of her material, but put it in a new appendix just called background information to sort of pare down the chapter, but still have the background information in the report. If you notice that she's the only one that has all these graphs and tables, which is inconsistent with the format for the rest of the report. So I would be willing to edit chapter 1, but to edit it to make it a little smaller.
Ken, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm very happy to help, Bill work through the editing of that climate section that Rebecca had worked on. I had talked with her a little bit about it before, and just to make sure that it gets, streamlined in the rest of the document. I think it makes sense to revisit it for sure.
If the two of you would be willing to work together on that, I think that would be excellent.
Sure.
That would be great.
That would be fine. There's a lot of the information on climate. If I don't know if I'm going off on a tangent, tell me to stop. But in terms of climate, you have 3 real large areas that produce greenhouse gases. You have energy production, which is power plants. You have industrial heavy industry, and then you have transportation. And transportation is, not someone driving down to Millen's hardware store. It's, all the trucks and trains and airplanes nationwide. For those 3 areas, it seems to me that the energy part of it, not that we have any power plants within the village of Wilmette, but certainly in terms of energy efficiency, that is, reducing energy in individual homes, et cetera, that really is where a lot of, I think, if we want to get a bang for the buck, if what Wilmette as a village could do to try to reduce greenhouse gases, if we could have a very active, energy reduction program, energy efficiency, whatever you want to call it, I think that would get us the biggest bang for the buck. And I would like to, try to enhance the energy chapter with a lot more emphasis or connection to reduction of greenhouse gases. So that was a thought that I had, that really what Wilmette can do for climate change, to me, seems to be very much related to the energy part of it. There's no heavy industry in Wilmette that we can regulate. And in terms of transportation, like I said, we could certainly try, there's a mobility chapter, which we could, encourage, bikes, electric vehicles. I think at our last short meeting, we mentioned that the police department is getting 3 hybrid squad cars. Again, all of that helps in the transportation side of it. But I think the biggest bang for the buck, and I don't want to be repetitive, is if we can promote energy efficiency within the village.
And the energy audit that is being updated now, that was done a few years ago, very much supports that as well. Very much does. So yeah, I think that would be great. So if you two would be up for reviewing that, and then I think and John and Kate, if you can advise me on the best way for this, but I think as it comes out of that, making suggestions for maybe even some of those charts would slide to the energy section, or specific suggestions that go to that. And the whole community solar thing very much might become part of that too.
Well, Julie, my suggestion was, or recommendation was, that as the original editor, I would like to do that myself, take a first cut at streamlining chapter 1, maybe run it by Ken and then see what, the commission as a whole thinks.
I think that sounds good. Yeah. Yeah. I think that sounds very good. And then what we're looking at too is, as we just look at this whole thing, is I think we agreed early on that we might not have exactly the same sections as the GRC2 framework. So for instance, leadership I drafted, but really that'll get rolled into some other things. But I'm thinking I could work with staff on that. And we can maybe do that simultaneously as you two are looking at climate.
Okay, I have a comment on that as well.
Yeah.
One of the thing that drives this plan is the spreadsheet that exists, and it's broken down into the 10 sections, and that's why we have 10 chapters. So I think for the sake of consistency, both relating the spreadsheet back to the plan or the plan back to the spreadsheet, as well as consistency with plans that other cities and villages have prepared, it's probably good to at least keep it in as a chapter. I don't have a problem if we, reference other parts of it or say that, leadership is incorporated plan-wise, but I wouldn't want to change the chapter structure because it screws up the relationship to the spreadsheet, which is the thing that drives the GRC in the first place.
Well, that could work because, like I felt like I was just writing stuff to write stuff. But yeah, maybe if we had just a very minimal thing, if we said this is incorporated elsewhere, because it is good to use the spreadsheet to track what's actually happening, what's being planned, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, also kind of on the same lines, Commissioner Kim had suggested doing the same thing with economic development. And, again, for the sake of consistency, I would like to keep Chapter 2 economic development in the report. And it seems that Wilmette is doing a lot with economic development. I mean, I think there's more. I think the story is bigger than what's in Chapter 2 right now. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, John, that's kind of your thing, isn't it? Aren't you involved with economic development?
Yeah, the community development department is. We could take a look at it and see if it's appropriate to beef it up with some of the things that have been happening in the village.
Yeah, like I said, I think the story is bigger than what is in Chapter 2 right now. I think we could make that a little more robust.
Yeah, because really simply having local businesses available. I know I've been buying stuff at Mill and Hardware instead of going to Home Depot because it's closer. Just little things like that make a big difference.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
Okay, that sounds good.
Additional comment about the energy chapter. I think there's too much focus on reducing energy utilization because the story of Western civilization has been expanding of energy demand and use. And so what is available to Wilmette? We already have a substantial amount of electrical energy derived from atomic powered plants. But we should emphasize, more than has been the case in the chapter, using so-called green sources. And the one that Evanston has led us, and that is solar panels.
Right.
I think that relates to the community solar panels can be good. There can be times like we tried to get them at our house. We have too many trees. It's too shady. It doesn't work. But we would be a candidate for community solar. So one way or another, certainly using solar can be a very good thing. Yeah, and I think that is something, we're looking at recommending, reviewing, encouraging use of spreading information about. But yeah, I think that certainly makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, Arthur, I think my comments on energy was more related to energy efficiency. The point
Yes.
being is that people could, try to use more LED light bulbs. There's certain types of switches that if a room is empty, it automatically turns the light off. I think most office buildings, conference rooms have that in now. So, I mean, those are the types of things. I mean, I'm not suggesting that, we all return to the dark ages, but that, there are still improvements that could be made in terms of the efficiency part of energy use.
And
Yeah,
another thing,
I agree. I had some of that in the waste chapter, the wasted energy.
yeah, I was
Some
just,
of that can be moved from Appendix C into the energy chapter. Didn't April work on that chapter? She's not.
I believe
here
she
today.
did, yes.
yeah. Yeah, because even things like, insulation, eliminating leaks. And I think some of the new smart home systems, that only turn on the heat or the cooling when you need it, you can turn it on and off remotely. I think one of the themes is there is some new technology, whether it's solar or smart house systems, that can really help with efficiency, and certainly looking at that.
All of that comes down to education, not only of the current generation who make up the adult population, but the children that will replace us need to be educated in that fashion, beginning early in their education years. Kindergarten through high school, most of the habits will be developed. And so
Yeah.
the commission and certainly the village board of trustees need to have a clear initiative with the boards of education to introduce, reduce, reuse, recycle into the early education of the children. The rewards will come in 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's see. Any thoughts or should we just stay in touch as to timing of the next time to get together? Staff, any thoughts on that? I guess I'm thinking I'd like to be able to move on to the next step and getting it out to staff for review as soon as we could, because I feel like we have some good momentum going, and I'd like to keep that going.
When you say getting out to staff, are you talking about beyond the staff that are, on today's call?
Yes, we're talking about engineering and public works, and that's the main one that comes to my mind because a lot of these things would affect them. I don't know who all else. I don't know if even like the police or fire department would. Some of this stuff might affect them. Mostly engineering and public works, I think.
Okay. It might be, like I said, I'd like to sort of do an edit of climate, run it by Ken, get his thoughts, and then maybe, in a couple weeks, we could have a draft back to Alex, and then that could be the one that would be shared.
That sounds good. That sounds good. So that way we could plan to get together, in just a few weeks and see where we are with that. And in the meantime, I'm wondering if we all could take the section we're working on and try tying it back and seeing how it relates to the GRC2 spreadsheet.
Yeah, now I don't know. Early on, I think this was still when Chris was the chairperson, he asked us all, at that time we had different assignees for most of these chapters to take our section of the spreadsheet and complete it. We distributed a version that had some check marks in, but many of them were blank. So I don't know. I think as one of the tasks that still remains to get this plan completed would be to, in fact, fill out that spreadsheet. So again, for the current assignees, it might be helpful to do that.
Okay, it's not included in the draft that was
No,
distributed for
no.
this meeting.
No, it's Appendix A, and it needs to be inserted. And I don't know who has the most recent. John, maybe at that time you were sort of managing the documents. I mean, you might have the most current version, and it could probably be a year or so old of that spreadsheet.
Yeah, I'm sure one of us does.
Okay, well, I think maybe it would be just because that's a lot of work. It's much different from the text part of the document to, in fact, send that out as a separate document for review and update.
As an
Okay,
Excel
so-
document, not a PDF,
Exactly, it's an Excel spreadsheet, correct?
Right.
Art?
So
but
at
not
our-
as a PDF because we can't edit it, or
No.
I can't.
So hopefully by our next meeting, we would have each had a chance to look at that spreadsheet, and that's something we could take a look at then too.
If I could just interject real quick, I know I think it was the February meeting, a couple commissioners requested that when I send out the sustainability plan, that it be the Word version so you can put your edits, directly into the document. So kind of similar to what I did back in May and June, I can, look through for that spreadsheet and then also send out the draft sustainability plan Word document. So I'll make sure when I'm emailing you guys materials that it's materials that you can edit directly and not, just a PDF that you're just looking at.
Yeah,
Okay.
my intention in terms of doing edits would be to use the Word document with the edit feature so that people can see, what's gone out and what's gone in, so that makes it a little easier for reviewing it.
Absolutely, not a problem at all. Make sure.
Okay, and I'm wondering at the same time, since we had discussed, pretty much decided that climate would be the overarching theme. If there's anything that pops out at you like, oh, this should really be mentioned in this section, this should really be mentioned in that section, if you can call that to our attention too, so that we can start, unifying it and tying it together. Okay, well, it sounds like we have a plan for next steps. So within a few weeks, we would be ready. And let's see, excuse me just one second, then I'll let you speak there. So Bill, can you just stay in touch with staff regarding your timing so that they can know when to start looking for a schedule for us to meet?
Yes, like I said, I think over the next 2 weeks, again, in coordination with Ken, I would like to do the edits of the most recent Word document that Alex distributed. I'm sure I can get that done in a couple of weeks.
Okay, so we'd be looking, early to mid-September. Yes, Arthur, what do you want to say?
Yes, I had a question about chapter 10 on water. In the recommendations, it's suggested that they continue the ongoing effort to reduce water utilization, meaning drinking water, but the drinking water goes through all the plumbing. But looking at the sections in the chapter on drinking water, I didn't find a description of the ongoing plan to reduce utilization. Did I miss it?
I don't have the version in front of me right now, Arthur, but my recommendation, or my recollection, I should say, excuse me, was that for water conservation, we were talking about such things as, use of low flow toilets, showers, plumbing fixtures. There's a national plumbing code standard that requires those, but certainly it didn't require older homes to do any retrofits. So that I think the recommendation is to try to encourage village residents to adopt the most water efficient appliances within their individual homes.
I think the chapter should make reference to what it is that we recommend be continued, rather than leave that to the variable and incomplete knowledge of most of the people who'd be reading it.
Well, here's my thought, and this might sound a little heavy-handed. We don't live in a police state, so I mean, we can make recommendations to residences, individual homeowners, to try to use as much water conservation as possible. We're not going to go into someone's house and rip out their toilets and washing machine.
I'm not
what I mean?
suggesting that. I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that the body of Chapter 10 describe the things that the recommendation wants to continue, just as you did.
Right.
Limited
All right. And I,
toilets
if I
lawn
excuse me.
sprinkling.
Right. If I didn't do that, I certainly will make sure that comes across very clear.
Okay, that sounds good. Let's see, I have another question for staff about procedure. We received some email communication. Do we need to have somebody read that into the record?
Yeah, that will be during the public comment portion when we move to that part of the meeting.
Comment. Okay, very good.
Yep. And then
it's
additionally, there's actually, sorry, go ahead. Additionally, there's been a couple comments made in the chat section by a couple of the guests. So I can read those in the public comment as well when the time comes.
Okay, very good. But as long as we're in session, we can discuss the content, because there were some emails about concern about fire pits.
Yes.
Yeah, and I did a little bit of reading about that myself this afternoon, just for background. And it sounds as though wood burning creates the most particulate matter and volatile compounds and that sort of thing that could cause breathing problems for people. It sounds as though Duraflame or something like that is a little better, but still there's a lot of stuff. I don't know what other things people use for fire pits. Are there like gas flames that are used sometimes?
Yeah, there a lot of times they'll hook up to a gas line. And
Okay.
I should point out, Chapter 1 does, I think it's, what is it? Under protection of outdoor air quality, there is a recommendation to look at banning or limiting fire pits. So it's actually in there, and that would be one of the items that we talked about already that would come back, I'm sure, to the EEC to take a look at, to again, whether we should ban them or limit them to a certain type of fuel, like propane or natural gas.
Okay. So it seems like we're starting to generate a to-do list of things for us to review and potentially recommend, and it seems like that would be on that list then.
Definitely, and I do know that the 2 emails that you got in, just for a clarification on public comment, those emails came a little bit different than the public comment emails to Alex. So Alex is going to read those that came to him for public comment. I got emails in regards to concern about fire pits, actual concerns in a neighborhood. And I recommended that those individuals participate in this discussion. And I asked if they wanted their email shared with you. Those won't be read because they didn't come as a part of a public comment for this meeting. You have them. They're going to be in the the file. They're going to be included in any sort of document that we send out about the sustainability plan. And again, I know those two residents are, whether they'll want to comment, they're listening in and being part of this meeting right now.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. Okay, at this point, it seems to be we've concluded our discussion and we have a plan for moving forward for the next few weeks. So I would like to open it up for public comment. And staff, if you can advise me on how to do this, do we just open it up and then people can join the meeting?
So yeah, we have a couple guests in the meeting now. I've noticed, I think Linda Kurtz and Karen Glenmeyer used like the little hand emoji to say that they wanted to speak. So what we usually do in Village, same thing with David Firster, what we usually do in Village board meetings is I will read the emails that I received at the public email, the public comment email address or my email address. And then we'll go to speakers in the chat. So for those guests, if you don't mind, just give me a quick second. I'm going to read through. We have 2 emails to address, and then we'll open the floor to the guests in the chat. Okay, so our first public comment was sent by, let's see, her name is Maya Crystal. The subject line is public comment for Environmental and Energy Commission meeting on August 20th. My name is Maya Crystal. I am a resident of Wilmette and will co-head New Trier's Environmental Club this year. I looked over the sustainability plan and appreciate the efforts of the village to make Wilmette more sustainable. I would like to ask the board to add 2 actionable items to the sustainability plan. First, the village should place a year-round ban on gas-powered leaf blowers and work towards using all electric or alternative lawn equipment. Second, the village should make the composting program year-round and consider partnering with Collective Resource for this task. Having tried both the composting offered through the village and Collective Resource, my family found Collective Resource to be better as it is a year-round composting program, and you can compost anything that was once living. There are many restrictions on what can be composted using the current village system, thus making composting confusing for residents. Partnering with Collective Resource would take the guesswork out of composting and allow for year-round service. And that was submitted by Maya Crystal, rising senior at New Trier High School. Okay, the next public comment email we got, actually, I just do want to be sure. So we received a public comment email from Lori Leibowitz. However, I do see that she is actually joined into this meeting. So I can read the public comment into the record, or Lori, if you can hear me, if you could speak up and say if you'd like to have your email read by myself, or if you'd like to comment yourself. Either one's fine. Okay.
It's fine for you to read it.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay, and this is submitted obviously by Lori Leibowitz. Sustainability plan comments is the subject line. Dear EEC Commission, I am writing to endorse the proposed sustainability plan and to offer a few comments. I applaud the Commission's commitment to lead the village in doing our part to reduce climate change. Here are some thoughts about small gas-powered equipment for your consideration. Number 1, is it possible to inventory not just vehicles, but any gas-powered equipment such as leaf blowers, pumps, etc.? I encourage the village to target replacement of gas-powered equipment with electric/battery or lower emission substitutes because of the high level of emissions generated by this type of equipment. As recognized in the sustainability plan, if the village is able to coordinate with other municipal entities such as the Park District, schools, and the library, it's possible that cost saving may be available or even equipment sharing across municipal services. Number 2, I am encouraged that the village plans to work with local landscapers to educate and support them in replacing gas-powered equipment. Educational programs, equipment exchanges, and working with local suppliers to obtain discounts have been used successfully in other municipalities. Many landscapers are reluctant to switch from gas-powered equipment. The village can play a valuable leadership role to ease the transition. Number 3, educated consumers may begin to request environmentally friendly landscape services or begin using equipment and products that support a healthy green space. My observation is that many residents don't understand the difference their choice of landscape, equipment, and products can make. The plan makes a commitment to educate and empower residents, and I hope the village will actively engage in this process, even though some may be slow to change. Thank you for your efforts towards making our village a more environmentally friendly place to live. Lori Leibowitz. Those were the 2 emails we received to myself and to the public comment email address. Like John mentioned earlier, we did also receive a public comment from Karen Glenmeyer, but she is in the chat. So I think I saw that she had the emoji up earlier, so I think she will probably make that comment herself. Is that correct? Let's see if she chimes in.
Oh, she says her audio isn't working, so I would just read the email into the record.
No problem at all. All right, and this was submitted by Karen Glenmeyer. Hi, John. Would you please share my comments with the EEC in preparation for tomorrow's meeting? They're long, but hopefully useful, and I've attached them as a Word document in case this is easier to digest. And then just so we know, this was already sent to commissioners, but obviously for reading into public comment or to the public record. Okay, I found the June 24th, 2020 draft Sustainable Community Strategic Plan to be an outstanding set of ambitious and realistic goals with specific and actionable recommendations, as well as substantive and informative background information. Many thanks to all of the staff and commissioners who have clearly put in a great many hours to create this robust plan. In particular, I was impressed with the climate section, Chapter 1, with regard to its clear and informative background information and its strong goals and recommendations. Below are some specific comments regarding specific sections of the plan. Paragraph 2, introduction. I don't understand the relevance of much of this information to the sustainability plan. For example, how does the excellence of our schools inform the goals of sustainability? The last 2 sentences on open space seem a little bit like afterthoughts. It would make more sense to me if this section focused on areas relevant to sustainability, with a more thorough description of open space, as well as the local economy, informed and engaged citizenry, and other assets that relate to the plan. Or we could remove this section altogether, as it might not really be necessary given the presumed audience will meet residents for the plan. Paragraph 5, the graph. How is electric power distinguished from the residential, commercial, and industrial sectors? Are these latter sectors' electricity usages accounted for in the electric power section or in their own sections? Section 1.45b. I would suggest recommending LEED Platinum or its equivalent, as there are alternative certification systems that might be just as robust or even more so, and others might be developed in the future. Section 1.4.5c. I recommend requiring any community solar projects to be certified as pollinator friendly, according to the Illinois Pollinator Friendly Solar Site Act 525 ILCS 55. Section 1.4.5i. I'd suggest adding after the word aggregation the following: with 100% renewably sourced electricity. Data from neighboring municipalities suggests that this action is likely to have a greater impact on village-wide GHG emissions than any other item. I'd suggest moving it farther up in the list to reflect its importance. The League of Women Voters has been doing research into the impact and effectiveness of electrical aggregation with renewable energy certificates, and would be happy to share this research with the EEC and Village Board. Section 1.4.9. I'd recommend strengthening the tree ordinance to better protect large trees from home demolition and new construction. Section 1.4.10. I think it's important and consistent with village-wide priorities to strengthen our zoning laws to discourage the loss of permeable surfaces with demolitions / new construction and with remodeling. 1.4.22e. I'd recommend replacing the word continue with the word strengthen, as I believe there's widespread agreement that the current ordinance is not having the desired impact. Section 3.4.5. Perhaps reword it a bit to read a little more clearly and specifically, such as renewable energy should be evaluated as a viable option as the source of electricity for municipal, residential, public, and commercial buildings will met. One option to consider is electrical aggregation with the purchase of renewable energy certificates to equal 100% of our electricity usage. I'm not sure the leadership section adds much that isn't already incorporated into other sections. Section 6.4 and 8.4. I'd suggest omitting the words "the village should" at the beginning of each recommendation, as this language is implied, and omitting the words would make these sections consistent with the other sections in the plan. Section 7.4.1. I'd suggest recommending a full-time village-wide sustainability coordinator position. Section 8.1, diversity of housing stock. The first paragraph should also mention retention of stormwater as a reason for not increasing a home's footprint. Section 8.2, diversity of housing stock. I'd suggest removing the sentence beginning with anecdotally, as this topic is covered in section 8.1 in general terms, and if we don't have any data, we should just stick with this fact. Section 8.2, local food. Are there currently any restrictions about growing food or planting habitat in front yards or parkways? If so, we should recommend removing or amending these restrictions. 8.4.2, if teardowns are more prevalent and Wilmette, this should be stated under existing conditions. If we don't have this information, the sentence should read to determine whether and why teardowns. Section 10.2, drinking water. In the middle of this paragraph, the sentence beginning, the results of this testing needs a time component, has never exceeded, didn't exceed in the most recent year tested, etc. Section 10 should reference the sections in sustainability, section 8 that discuss permeable surfaces and stormwater retention. Some typos I noticed. Page 6, economy section. In the first sentence, government should have an apostrophe after the final S. In the second sentence, there should be a comma between emissions and does. In the final sentence, there should not be a comma between emissions and can. Section 2.1, introduction, no comma is needed after the opening word, although in the second paragraph, change in concentrated to is concentrated. Section 2.4.1, remove the word the before Wilmette near the end of the first paragraph. Thanks for reading. Once again, let me say how impressed I am with this draft and how much I appreciate the effort that has gone into producing it. Thanks very much for the opportunity to comment and contribute. Sincerely, Karen Glenmeyer. Okay.
Alex, because those comments are so specific to the individual draft, could you distribute that to the EEC commissioners?
Yep, and actually, John already emailed that earlier this morning, but I could resend the email again. And then let's see, just because we did receive a couple comments in the chat while we were meeting, I'll just read those. They're pretty quick, and then we will get to the callers. I apologize. I'm glad to see there's lots of participation though. Okay, the first comment made in the chat while we were meeting from David Firster. So many people light their houses and yards every night with floods or strings of Christmas lights. There is no darkness left in Wilmette. A Dark Skies campaign would be great. From Karen Glenmeyer, the climate chapter as written seems to already provide the overarching theme that Julie suggests, so I think it's pretty close to what she's suggesting, and I agree this makes good sense. I think the background information in the climate chapter is very important for providing context, although I agree that moving it to an appendix would be fine. And then Karen Glenmeyer also commented, supporting local businesses is very green. From David Firster, improving insulation and weatherproofing gives the biggest benefit. Heating is one of the biggest use in most homes. And from there, we just have comments from David Firster, Laura Rodriguez, saying that they'd like to comment. So we can open the floor to the people who called in.
I'd like to comment.
Can you just identify yourself?
Yeah, my name is David Firster. I live at 1621 Elmwood Avenue. I'm delighted to hear all the many things that the committee is giving its attention to. I wanted to stress the issue of fire pits. It has been for a long time a torment during the summer season. When the air cools off, you throw open the windows and smell the beautiful flowering trees and hear the crickets, and then the room is filled with the most acrid, awful smelling smoke that leads to watering eyes and scratchy throat and sometimes asthma the next day. And I talked to one of my neighbors about this, and he said, how can the smoke be in your house? It's going straight up. And he pointed at his fire pit, and the smoke indeed does go straight up. But as soon as it cools down at about 20 feet above the ground, it starts spreading out laterally and covers the neighborhood with a terrible pall that's really unpleasant. And it happens night after night because so many people have these things, and even if 1 out of 10 uses them, it happens very often. So I actually purchased an air quality monitor that gives values of particulates. I've only been monitoring for about a week, but I've already seen several events. They're very mild when you smell them, but the particulates actually go over the Illinois suggested limits of how much this PM 2.5 it's called. And the suggested limit is 35 micrograms per cubic meter, and it goes well above that when one of these fire pits is going, and it can stay up there for a couple of hours. I'd share my screen and show you, but the hour is getting late and I don't want to take too much of your time. But I just wanted to I just wanted to stress that it's really terrible, and it's really terrible for you. And even these Duraflame logs, which are supposed to be better, smell like garbage pits. I mean, it smells like you're sticking your head in a chimney at a landfill. It's really awful. And so I would urge the village to urge people or make it illegal to have these things unless you have propane or methane heating your fire. Thank you.
Okay. I believe Linda Kurtz still has that little emoji next to her name. So Linda, if you'd like to speak, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Well, first of all, I'm Linda Kurtz. I live at 117 16th Street in Wilmette. And as Julie mentioned in the beginning, I'm also with Go Green Wilmette. And so, thank you all for all the work that you've done on this plan. As many people have said, it is really, really outstanding, and it represents a tremendous amount of effort. I'd like to thank Julie as well, for meeting with me earlier today, as well as a few other times to talk about a few things. And of course, bringing those, mentioning those during her report to you. So I did want to just reiterate on the community solar. If you haven't signed up for it, really consider doing that. I'll share information with Julie, and I'll send it to John as well for distribution. So if you're not aware about how to do it, certainly that information will show you how to do it. There are webinars that are being held throughout this month in September if you want to learn more. It's really a no obligation, thing that you can do to essentially support community solar for Illinois. So really encourage you to do that. If you haven't done so already, tell your neighbors, tell your friends, anyone in the greater Chicago area, whether they own or rent, can sign up for community solar. So, really good thing to do. Again, I won't belabor that point, but, again, something that we really want to do. So it sounds like there's a lot of support for looking at what can we do to get rid of gas-powered leaf blowers and other equipment. And I just wanted to highlight that is in the sustainability plan, and it has a target of 2030 about moving away from all that equipment. So one of the challenges that I would give back to all of you is, what will it take to get there, and what should we do today and next year and 2 years and so on, so that we can meet that target by 2030? So could we start on having a year-round ban on gas-powered leaf blowers, and then maybe adding in other equipment over time? So, what could the commission do in terms of studying what that might be, what that roadmap could look like? Because we know that, it's a significant health hazard to the people that are using it, as well as a huge environmental issue as well. So I wanted to reiterate that. With respect to the commercial pesticide spraying, that Julie mentioned earlier too, and this very much goes along with pollinator, making, Wilmette pollinator friendly and whatnot. That's a huge one, I think, that deserves some special attention, and actually looking at now, what can we do today to perhaps incentivize people to do that less. Some of the issues for that, it's really those mosquito spraying companies. It's actually, it kills other larvae too. So a lot of the good beneficial insects also get killed when that gets sprayed. It does contribute actually to mosquito insecticide resistance. So, then when we really have a need to kill mosquitoes because there's an outbreak of West Nile or some other issue, those chemicals, those products aren't going to work as effectively. And moreover, there's a huge drift that occurs. I've seen it, in my own house or my own yard from the neighbor spraying. So again, what could we do that might, beyond education, could it be something like we require those companies, or maybe the people that engage them, to do a 24-hour notice to their neighbors, so they could close their windows, for instance, or take other precautions so that less drift gets into their yard. So again, just, things, again, to be thinking about. One comment I had on the sustainability plan, particularly with respect to energy, and it ties into the conversation that, of course, you all had, is to also consider what do we do about natural gas? So, right, as we move to a carbon-free economy, eventually natural gas should in some way go away. So again, how do we prepare the village? How do we start preparing our residents to make that transition, right, from heating, from gas powered boilers and things like that? How do we replace that? Now, the technology is not great yet to replace that with electric. The assumption would be in the years that come that technology increases. So again, how do we get the village ready? How do we get our residents ready to think about replacing natural gas appliances with electric or something else that again doesn't have a carbon footprint? So, there might be some information to put in the plan with respect to that natural gas piece, not just electrical, and again, not just the efficiency piece. And the last thing I would like to request is, I know this year has been a challenge, of course, with COVID and whatnot, but say for 2021, would it be possible to create a meeting schedule in advance so that the commission meets at a regular frequency, so that those of us who like to join in a sense, can plan for that and, not maybe hear about it at the last minute and then, and whatnot. So, it's just something to think about would it be possible to set that schedule for the year in advance, recognizing that things come up and not every commissioner may be able to join, but perhaps it might just make scheduling easier. So thank you all. I appreciate your time. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Linda. And then from what I can see, it looks like Laura Rodriguez was also wanting to comment earlier. She put up the little hand emoji. So Laura Rodriguez, if you'd like to speak.
Sure, I'm just going to come in on audio. I live at 1618 Elmwood Avenue, so David First and I are neighbors. And I am having also the same issue with fire pit smoke coming into the house. And I know I've had some exchanges with Don, and so I just wanted to bring this up. It's very difficult to kind of, yeah, well, I've lived in Wilmette for 16 years now, and this problem has just become worse and worse, especially this year, I think, because so many people are home. My indoor air quality ends up suffering because somebody wants to make s'mores, and so it makes it difficult to number one, breathe, and even when windows are closed, even air conditioning has to be run, and air cleaners have to be run, and it just has become a huge issue. Yeah, I'm sensitive to the smoke smell, and it makes it difficult to breathe. And I will second David's comment about asthma attacks and just affecting overall health.
What is your?
I'm sorry?
I thought you were finished. I apologize.
Oh, not quite yet. So, but I do have a question for the committee. This is a really wonderful document that you all have put together. Where does it go from here? You've taken public comments. You've written some wonderful recommendations. What happens next once it's edited and it's in its final form?
Julie, I think you explained what the next steps were in terms of how it goes through the village process.
Right, exactly. So we're working on finalizing a few things over the next few weeks, and then it would go to the administration committee of the village. Well, first of all, it would go to staff primarily, I think engineering and public works is the one that would be most affected by it, but others might be as well. Any input from them would come back to us. Then we would go to the administration committee, same thing, any input from them. And then it would go to the village board as a whole to be approved, and then it would be publicized, and it's the plan. And then we've had developed, in effect, kind of a to-do list, which actually some of those things we could start working on. But basically that would be the plan. So we're working towards getting it finalized, and once it's formally approved, then it would be on the village website and put forward to the public in various ways.
Okay. And what is your timeline for this?
Well, we're planning to meet again here in a few weeks. We originally, before COVID, we had hoped to have something like this fall that put a wrench in things for a while, but we are moving forward again. You know what, I think we'll discuss the timeline at the next meeting, but within the next few months, I feel that we have very good momentum and we'll continue to move forward.
Okay, that's wonderful. Well, as you can hear, I have vested interest in at least one section of your plan, and I would be happy to help move that forward if there's an avenue to do that. So,
Great, thank you.
thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Question for Laura R.
Yes.
If the chair recognizes.
Yes, you know, within reason, realistically, this is supposed to be more, rather than an ongoing discussion, it's supposed to be more just for public comment. Go ahead and say something if you want, but really we've reached the end of our discussion. This is just for the public to make their comments. We can, if there's a direct question, we can answer it, but it's really intended, you know, just for the public. But you know, if you have a comment, go right ahead. And Alex, do we have anybody else in queue?
I don't believe so. It seems like all of the guests we had that were part of this chat have already commented.
Okay, great. Well,
and,
you know, this.
And sorry, just to speak it into the record, we have not received any public comments on YouTube Live because that is one of the options for public comment.
Okay, very good. Yeah, you know, this is our first full-fledged meeting, and first of all, I want to thank everyone for all your work leading up to this, all your work today, and really, I think I wasn't sure how this would go. I feel that it went very smoothly, and it seems like public comment and interaction among our committee and all that works very well. So again, thank you to everyone for making this happen. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, and Kate, would you call the roll for approving the motion to adjourn?
Yep. Chair Wolf?